Hi folks. I think we are live on YouTube. Welcome to Imagination Festival Day 1. Very exciting. All the films have just been streamed, and I am. Hi folks. I think God! We are live on YouTube. Hang on. Oh my God! Welcome to Imagination Festival Day 1. La, 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 very exciting. Pause. I could hear myself there. Technical brilliant glitch there. I am very, very excited because we have 5 of our writers on this Q&A, and we've got people on this webinar who are going to be asking questions as well. But I wonder whether we just go around and introduce ourselves. Maybe let's just say who you are, what play you wrote, and where in the world you are. That would be a good thing to do. Daniel, since you would first join us, why don't you go first?
Hello, yeah. My name is Daniel Ward and I wrote Tactile Nature. And currently, I am in Canterbury in Kent on a small kind of staycation with some members of my family. They're out, I think they're punting, to be honest. And I've come back to have a little chat. So I'm hoping that they don't all come in here in about 10 minutes, like screaming our heads off.
It'll be brilliant.
Apologies.
It'll be entertainment.
Yeah, man, we'll roll with it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Thanks, Daniel. Owen, hello.
Hi, I'm Owen McAndrew. I wrote Long Distance Call, and I'm up in Northwest London. I'm in like Kensal Green, in our flat, and I've got like flatmates moving in like today. So there's like quite loud hammering like going on, like, but I don't think you can hear that, so it's fine.
It's brilliant. All the excuses of noise. Right, I love it.
10 and 11.
Fantastic. Hi, Chino.
Hi, my name's Chino Dimba. Chinonyerema Dimba is my writing name, and I wrote Say Something.
And whereabouts in the world are you, Chino?
Oh, I'm currently in very sunny Bristol, which is very suspicious because we've had so much rain the last few days. So I'm really like, what's going on?
I love it that when I asked so far, all 3 of you, you've all looked out a window just to make sure that you know where you were.
Yeah.
I do love that. It's great. Good evening, Ryan. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. My name is Ryan Kelly Cameron. I'm in Shortlands, Kent.
Nice. We've got Kent contingents here. This is great. Lovely. And which play did you write?
Sugarbutt.
Fantastic. Well remembered. Good. And last but not least, John. Hello.
Hello. My name's John. I wrote Up in Your Head, and I'm currently in Tenby in Wales on a holiday, which, as Shino said, has been quite wet overall, but it's very nice. I'm here with my wife and some friends who are also in the next room. So basically, if there is noise pollution from one of us, we can all deny it and blame it on.
Yeah,
I have a small dog asleep behind me, so if they hear something, like, I'll just add to that. Great. I went to Tenby on a school trip. It's a very nice place. There you go. Random fact for you. So we're here. We're going to be here for about half an hour or so, and we'll see how. We've got some questions. So I suppose my first question is why you got involved in the Imagination Project. What was it that attracted you to this? And yeah, let's just keep it as simple as that. Who wants to answer that question? Who wants to start? Go on, someone be brave. Don't just say the money.
I'll start. I think it was certainly for me initially about the invitation to write at this particular moment. You know, lockdown felt like such a sudden stop in terms of activity and such a shock. And so I guess getting the invitation to write something that was about that anyone could do felt really like it just felt like a slightly different thing. And yeah, I think that was it for me. It was just the idea that anyone could pick up those scripts and make it their own and make it something for themselves. And I really felt that that's what I needed in that moment as a writer, was to know that it was just there for anyone to do. sort of being locked away like this. It just felt important to give something to people. So that's certainly what motivated me to do it.
Amazing. Thanks, Chino. How about you, Ryan?
Yeah, I think for me it was it had a lot to do with the fact that everyone in this country or across the world were going through this really unique experience at once. And I think a lot of my writing is usually it's very local, and it's to do with like, you know, things that I have been through or people around me. So I felt like this was really like, you know, an incredible opportunity to go, okay, we all going through this right now. We can all relate to these things. And yeah, that was really exciting for me to go, okay, someone that could be from a completely different walk of life, we can connect during this massive pandemic. Yeah.
John, what about you? Why this project? What was it for you?
I'm probably going to echo the sentiments, but I think it was the fact that it had this greater sort of purpose. I think when lockdown first happened and we were all sort of trying to work out how theatre might work, you know, we're all sort of trying different things, and I think early on I was sort of like, well, I'm not sure what theatre looks like in this version of the world, but I kind of don't want to just do stuff for my own sake, essentially. Not that there's anything wrong with that, and that's absolutely fine, but I sort of felt like, you know, what's the purpose for it? And this project seemed like it had an incredibly clear purpose, which was to sort of, as you've both said, sort of join up people from around the country to send these plays out, to see what comes back, to enter into this sort of mass act of like communion of all of us, which and sort of, I guess as well, like, just, you know, theatres find themselves in such places of uncertainty, and the kind of those aspects of theatre are the stuff that's kind of hardest to maintain, or very hard to maintain during this crisis. And this just felt like it had a really clear purpose, and watching the films, certainly I found that it like exceeded my expectations, and it was just really thrilling to see all these films coming from different perspectives, different parts of the country, and just to see. So that, for me, have I answered it all clearly? Probably not. But basically, but yeah, the community aspect, and sort of trying to sort of stake out this new thing. And because it wasn't just about making plays for the sake of making plays, again, not that there's anything wrong with that, but that it had this greater purpose, which felt really cool.
I really like the use of the word communion. I think that feels really a really nice way of.
It's my go-to word. I'm struggling. I've got to sound intelligent now. I'll bring that.
Communion. That's great. Very good. Daniel, Owen, is there anything from you that hasn't been sort of said already? Any other reasons why you sort of joined the project?
I'd just like to kind of reiterate, kind of, I guess, the invitation to people was really what excited me about the project generally, rather than being, because similar to what Ryan says, I sometimes write from lived experience and I write quite locally. So to have the opportunity to do something which was about everybody was really exciting to me. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
Yeah. I think I quite liked it. I'd agree, and I think it was quite nice to see. It's not like you can pretend this hasn't happened. I feel like you see lots of writers like moving into doing new things and doing new forms because like there was no alternative at the time. You kind of get pushed to create new things, and that was quite nice to be writing something specifically as an invitation for anyone to perform, to like have to write it so that anyone could do it with whatever limited like things you have in your house, and if you've never acted before. And I think that's quite nice. I feel like it's nice to see lots of people who were like really reactive to what was happening and using it as an opportunity to make new stuff in a quite horrible circumstance.
I mean, I think that's really interesting that you've also spoken about how exciting it is to sort of write in a really open way, which some of you said sort of goes against maybe some of the usual ways that you write. But also, I mean, I'm interested about how easy that is, because if you're writing for everyone, that becomes a big ask, right? Because you're not putting necessarily Are you put, you know, like, were there problems with that? Were there considerations that you had to put into that? Was there?
Oh, I think for me, because it wasn't a case of going, okay, I need to write something that incorporates everybody. It was a case of going, what are we all facing together? So I literally just flicked through my Twitter feed and it was like, okay, yeah, like sprinkle cake is £75. It's like, okay, yeah. And everybody is talking about that. No one has flour. Everybody's talking about that. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, okay, yeah, like we can open up this conversation now. And like, do you know what I mean? Like the community is so much bigger now. And it was like, okay, cool. Those are the things that I want to write about because we're all going through it. So yeah, the research wasn't that crazy, to be honest. It's just what everyone was speaking about at that moment. Yeah.
Was it fairly easy task then in terms of opening out to like to create a piece that opened up for everyone? Because it was quite, you know, I was quite clear in the ask that we needed to make sure that we could connect so that everyone could sort of, anyone could pick it up in some way and be able to perform it. Were there any sort of worries or or was it a liberating experience?
Is that to me or is it to everyone?
Or like that's to everyone.
Oh.
Everyone.
I think the constriction became something that was really positive for me. I think, yeah, like I just thought about, to be honest, I just thought about what was annoying me about lockdown. And then I felt like that was something that was universal for everybody. And that's where I started from. And that's what kind of gave me the impetus to write the piece and gave me the clarity about what it was I was trying to say and the why, as to why I'm writing it.
Chino, you are brilliant. Oh, that's great. Chino, you unmuted yourself. I don't know if you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me it was sort of slightly similar, but I realised actually watching my piece again how, in a way, it was me writing about my particular struggle in that moment, which was that, you know, I live somewhere where pre-lockdown I have quite a lot of quiet, and suddenly and like I know my neighbours, but I don't know them that well because our hours are slightly different in terms of our day. And suddenly I found I was hearing people that I'd never really heard before, you know, and it was such a weird thing because I was like, suddenly my peace and quiet had gone, and I had to really wrestle with that for a bit, you know, like, and I didn't realize how much sort of ownership I'd taken of this quiet space I have in the day when everyone else leaves. and so it was a sort of a bit of like that specific thing that I was trying to struggle with. But also the conversation that follows on from that is, you know, lockdown is not something we could help, but there's lots of other things that have come out of lockdown that we could help. We can do something about. We can do something about the move away from how important it is that you know the person that lives next door or lives upstairs or lives downstairs. Like, we can do something. We can change that. And like, it just felt like both a creative question in terms of how do I go about making something that, you know, that's that open, but also the kind of the personal question was how do we change this? How do I change this? How does this stop being an annoyance and start being something that could actually be beautiful and be about human connection, which is in that moment and still is something that feels so important to how we all come out of this, you know?
I think that's really interesting because I think there's something about togetherness and isolation, I suppose, that run through quite a few of these pieces. I just wonder whether, and of course when I was watching them today, they of course were of a particular time, which was sort of, I don't know, 4 months ago. And while we're still in extraordinary circumstances, the world has still changed again because it's sort of, we've got used to it in a particular way. I just wonder whether you sort of what's your thinking around like the idea of isolation and togetherness, and maybe what through these circumstances, or maybe through the stories that you're telling, how that may have related to your story? That's a really bad question. I've phrased it really badly. I'm just, what I'm interested in is about how through this, for me, this project was about bringing people together in extraordinary circumstances when we couldn't be together. And I wonder whether any of the stories that you wrote sort of reflected that, or how it sort of spoke of that in a particular way. I mean, Owen's, yours in particular, about the idea of trying to be close with someone, but using technology as a way of connecting, but never really physically being there. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I kind of felt like I was separated from my family who are back in Northern Ireland, and I kind of like most people was separated from people who I cared about, and I think you kind of understand, oh yes, we are connected by technology, but I think in this circumstance you get the limitations of that as well. It's like, it is yes, we're more connected now than ever, but also at the end of the day, you can't like hug your family, you can't see them, and also if no one's going outside, no one has any news. There's only like the things that are happening in the world to talk about, but there's nothing individually, specifically in your life, that might be happening, or at least that was my experience. I know it wasn't everyone's. So I think I felt like I ended up just like, my only job in those calls was trying to like cheer up my family, or to make like just dumb jokes to my parents. And I feel like that was kind of like where I was kind of feeling. I don't know. I feel like there is a thing of like a sense of like shared community, because it's something that everyone has some experience of. No one is unscathed from this. So I don't know what that means moving forward. But it's like everyone in the world felt it, and there are so few things that could be said of, I guess.
How did it feel? I don't know, like, I don't know how when you're writing, but certainly when I'm directing, I have a very particular idea of what this thing's going to turn out like, and I work with a writer particularly very closely. And while this is maybe an exhilarating process for you, what you essentially did was give your writing away to the brilliant general public to do as they wish. And they did. They interpreted it in brilliant and bizarre and awesome ways. I don't know how do you feel about that? Like, is in the pieces that you experienced, you saw, which you've only just recently seen, how did it differ or surprise you in terms of what they gave you back? John, yeah, go for it.
I'm gonna I was really thrilled. I think, but also I think I had the added benefit of the fact that you'd edited so many different versions of it together.
So many. I mean, so many.
Which was great, and they had multiple people in them anyway. So you sort of end up. I think what was really lovely for me is like, oh, I kind of feel like I've seen so many different versions of this film, or it was almost like a highlights reel of all the all the best versions. So but I think it was really interesting, because I don't know about the rest of you, but sometimes when I'm thinking about a play or something, I'll sort of try, and I find it quite useful to picture like where it's going to go on, what theatre, what's the space, or sort of trying to lock some things down in your head to sort of orientate yourself for all the other things that you're going to do. And with this one, you couldn't do that at all. So I sort of went in completely the opposite direction and tried to, you sort of try and, it's really interesting. You try and leave it as open as possible. And even I think I sort of said, like, if you want to change lines or add your own, and you can, like, but it sort of means that, I don't know, in my case, you can only really be thrilled because I had kept it just completely blank. I tried to keep it these just staccato thoughts, and not applied any of my own sort of, oh, what would I do if I was doing, really tried very hard to send it out into the world as a sort of blank document. And so it's just been, I reiterate, guys, it's lovely, but it's really great. You just like, oh my God, wow, I want to see the whole of that film, or like, I want to see the whole of that, what's going on there. So yeah, it was really great. I'm done.
Brilliant. Which you can, because the playlists are open now, so you can sort of check in with all of the
And I will.
Good. That sounds quite threatening, John, but brilliant. Anyone else, just in terms of when you're writing something, maybe you had an idea in your head of what this looked like, and then the piece that you then got presented back, like what was the experience of either that matching up or being very different?
Okay. I think in terms of my piece, I tried to make it inherent in the writing that it was accessible and it was open. So I had no idea who was going to present the final piece, what that was going to look like, because I couldn't. And that was quite fun to do, because I don't know, if you're writing a character and you know their backstory and you know the specifics of what they're doing, like you have a lot more stuff to deal with. When you're just writing a story that is so open and so accessible, every single person that brings something different to it is a joy, and it's wonderful to see. So yeah, I just tried to write a piece that was as accessible as possible, and in that way, every single time you hear it, it's a gift. Every single time you hear it, the way anyone's done it is a gift. That's what I'd say.
Lovely. And it was really interesting because it was really complicated because we got so many submissions, and I sort of went into a bit of a spin about how on earth we showcase and celebrate this, and it then sort of came down to, so you take John's, for example, it lends itself to 100 different voices, which was brilliant, and we got a real patchwork. But then there were very particular stories, like Chino's and like Owen's and like actually all of yours there, which actually lent themselves more to them being a single, like the single film that came through, which then I felt bad about because there were so many others that submitted, which we weren't sort of excluding, but we sort of, otherwise this festival would have gone on and like forever, which would have been an existential nightmare, I think. But I think that's yeah, and I'd sort of encourage you to go look at playlists. I wonder if any of the attendees on the webinar have got any questions, and if they do, then do ask. I'm just going to look. I've got a little sheet here. There was one question, someone from, I think Muriel from, oh no, I've asked Muriel's question. Sam asked, John, is a question to you. They asked, I think through Twitter, asked what was really going on up in your head during lockdown?
Well, the first day of, I don't think it was lockdown. I think it was the day that the theatres closed down. I had a day of rehearsal where I was directing the first day of rehearsal of Baby Reindeer, but I had a cough, so I couldn't go in. So I directed the first day of rehearsal of Baby Reindeer over Zoom. And I think I was just like a face on the wall, sort of going, Richard, can you go? Yep, great. Okay, go over there. And then at the end of the day, we found out that it was, that we had to shut it down. And so I mean, I don't know how other people's experience of lockdown was. The first week of my lockdown was basically just sat on the floor going, well, I mean, if I haven't got a job, I might as well just catch up with some TV. And then I guess in like the play itself is sort of me, but I tried to have lots of conversations with different people about what their experience of lockdown was, and sort of try and just snatch out little disparate thoughts. So you can kind of read the whole thing as like one person, or you can read it as multiple people. You can kind of read it as whatever you want. But I think that this particular phenomenon happened, which is like sort of Blur's Day, where just you'd wake up in the morning, you'd be like, oh, when is it? It doesn't matter, because every day is the same. So like, and just sort of finding those cycles that you were getting into. There's wonderful things that came out of it. In my case, obviously not very good, but like in my, there were some really positive things that were like, oh, I'm suddenly spending way more time with my wife than I usually would. We're going on walks. We're discovering the local area. We're making soup. We're buying vegetables. We're doing all the middle class cliche things. But then you also get into this pattern of like, oh, I just haven't seen my parents for longer than I've ever seen them. I haven't seen my brother or sister. I haven't done this, haven't done that, and trying to. So I guess the play is that is what was in my head, along with what was in lots of other people's heads. But it's just this mix of thoughts and different things, and like I say, that just grind of like, the days all blur into one big block.
I'm still there, John. That's all I.
I'm in Wales now. It's fine.
There's also a question that came in from Natalie, who asked, how do you approach writing your script without knowing who would be performing it, taking into account age, experience, etc., which sort of lends itself to what we were speaking about previously. But I don't know if there's a different answer to that, or anyone have a view on that, about if you're being so open, then does it sort of dilute the work, or does it focus you in a particular way? Who's going to take that?
I think for me, I might be repeating what I said earlier on, but I think for me, it kind of, the main focus for me was the experience rather than the character. I think that's what because I think when the commission first came up, I was like, man, like, this is crazy. Do you know what I mean? I'm someone I live with my characters. Do you know what I mean? Like, they live in my head, in my house. Like, how am I gonna create something? Like, yeah, it's crazy. But I feel like, yeah, for me, the main focus was the experience, and going, okay, if I can get as many things that everyone is going through, then I can write a piece on that rather than the character, and then it would lend itself then to actors coming in and putting the character on. So when I saw my piece earlier on, it was just like fantastic. Do you know, it was so interesting to see how the actor had created the character and made it unique in that way. Do you know what I mean? And how you could probably see the same piece performed a million different times, completely different, because it's just, do you know what I mean? It's like the soup without the sauce. Do you know what I mean? And the actors come in, they add it, and it's like, well done. It's like, this is good. So yeah, it taught me a lot. Yeah, in terms of my development. Yeah,
love that, soup without the sauce. That's really nice.
Soup without sauce, man.
We just had a question in from Subi, who asked, which is a bit of a follow on this, is that could you see yourself repeating this very open writing process in another time or in the future? Would you feel that it was something for now, like this particular time? Was it a moment? And will you be able to use this type of writing process again?
For me, maybe, but I really hope that there is never a crisis that the whole entire world has to face or to get by. So yeah, I mean, that's why it made it easier. But I don't know. Yeah.
Like anyone else, this open process, is it something that you might take forward in your writing, or was it something that you had previously, maybe? Owen.
I don't know, because I like writing specifically for like someone who I have in my mind who I feel like would be quite good at this, or I'd like to see them do that, or like. But I think what's really refreshing, I watched a couple of videos of my version because I'm conceited, and I thought like it was just really cool to see lots of people do very different things with it, and I guess I was trying to not write about like a very specific person, but more like a very specific emotion or like a feeling. And I think you can get trapped in the idea of like, oh, I'm the only person who thinks like this, which is like, of course, is not true. And lots of people from lots of different walks of life and lots of different abilities from you might think a similar way. So yeah, no, I quite liked it. I really like having like kind of like an open call and just seeing what lots of different people do. Also because actors are like just really good at doing that. Like they're just really good at bringing something new to a piece. That's what they do. Yeah.
Anyone else?
I'll go. I don't think I could repeat it. I think it was for the time, like, but it was lovely that it was for the time. It was like this. Everyone, it's like, how many things truly unite us? You know what I mean? Like, and it was just everyone had a relationship to this period of time, and everyone was going through it at the same time. And I think there are very useful things that I've taken from it in terms of when you're thinking about, you know, universal experiences that people have. But I don't think I wouldn't want to do it again. The thing that excited me about the project was how unique it was. And maybe if somebody else would like to intuit it in their way and do it, but for me, I'm like, I feel like I've done it and it was dope. But like, I don't think I personally want to do it again.
Fair enough. That's great. Chino?
Well, it's weird because I write quite a lot where lines aren't assigned to characters. So it's something that I use in my writing anyway, because I'm quite fascinated about that idea that, especially when you've got like a big ensemble piece, that anyone could step into those words and they would still carry something in the story, and they would still make something feel alive, whoever was saying. So it's something I guess I was familiar with before I wrote the piece, but it's kind of given me a little bit of a boost, like this thing that I've been kind of playing around with in my writing for the last few years. It's actually, yeah, it's quite interesting because usually I'm giving it to professional actors to do. I mean, I've done projects with community casts and given them that material, and it's just always a really interesting way to say, is it who's saying it or what's being said, right? And that's the question I'm constantly asking myself when I'm developing characters. Like, you know, the difference between a character, only that person can say that thing in that way is true, but then within a story there are things that we can all say, and that is also true, and those things will land in the same way and will speak of the same thing. So it's a really like, but I think for this project particularly, what was great about it was I did have an idea of this generational thing in the story, and seeing versions that were not generation, like, you know, was really interesting. It was like, oh, okay. And actually not feeling, oh no, that's the wrong version of it. It absolutely still feeling right for those words. So, and in the end, you know, the thing that the one that was chosen is about that story of how we, you know, how we don't see certain people in society, we don't hear certain people in society. And but I would definitely, I mean, it's definitely emboldened me, you know. So next time someone's like, but you haven't assigned that line, and don't you think you need to? And be like, no, mate.
I love that.
No, mate, I've got.
I love it.
More work we can hand off to the director in that department.
Yeah, mate, exactly.
Oh, yeah, brilliant. I see.
Yeah.
There's a few other little questions. I'm just aware of time because we'll be wrapping up shortly. There's one from the Electric Sunrise Project, who are based in Blackpool, and they did, John, you should look on the playlist. They did an epic. 50 members of community members from Blackpool did your version. It's a 20-minute epic film, which is amazing. I mean, they were just asking whether there's going to be another project developed. The thing with ImagiNation as well is we're keeping the project open. So this is sort of a milestone. This festival is a milestone to sort of represent, but we're going to keep it live on the website, so people can keep going, and then we'll sort of see what happens once lockdown. Once we know where we are a bit more with theatres, then we might sort of think about a live version. A question that's come through from YouTube is, has lockdown helped create ideas for the future or stunted them? I mean, you've all obviously written a play because that's what we're here for today, but I wonder, I mean, lockdown and, you know, this sort of extraordinary time we're still in it. How has ideas generation been for you? Are you making work currently? Has it stunted it, or have you embraced it? Who's gonna go?
I'm gonna go. I think that for me, it's created a slightly different question about maybe sometimes the very tight boundaries in which we think stories should be told and how stories should be told. And actually what that does is that it then leaves a load of stories untold because they don't quite fit into that thing. And I think it's really made me question that in a fundamental way. So looking at ideas suddenly and going, well, yeah, that might, and I suppose in some ways I'm talking about form, you know, but I'm also talking about theatre should be about the things that we need to know about the world, and we need to know about the world that is on our doorstep, and we need to know about the world that's a mile away, and we need to know about the world that's 20 miles away, and so on and so forth. And actually, there are times where I feel like, because stories, we maybe can't find a language or a form in which some stories can be told, we just don't tell them. And in the moment, I'm now quite keen that I would rather sit and watch some forms of storytelling that aren't that popular or aren't that celebrated in our theatre storytelling culture, but actually I would rather that than those stories not be told any longer, you know. And I look at, it's just been, lockdown's been a chance to take a step back and to question why those stories aren't being told. And some of the things that we're currently trying to wrangle with, if you like, you know, I remember going to see Daniel's piece, God, was it last year? I don't even know which year I'm in. Yeah.
Yeah, no.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think you saw it. I think you saw it at the beginning of this year.
Yeah, I saw it at the beginning of the year. And you know, that was one of the few plays that I've seen that's even gently touched upon, like, our education system. And like, now education is, and the changes that have happened in our education system over the last like 10 years have been quite big, like quite monumental. And I don't know how many stories I've seen about that, you know. And that might be because we look at the setting of a school and we think, oh, that's been done. Actually, have the stories about what's really going on in schools been told? I don't know. I'm not sure they have. And if we can't find this big, exciting story to tell, then I would frankly just like someone to just tell it in whichever way they feel, you know. So there's a sort of excitement and a frustration that has come out of lockdown for me about, we can't keep deciding that there are these very narrow ways in which we can tell stories, because we lose stories in doing that, in my opinion.
Love that. Really, I think that's a really brilliant way of talking about it. And I think that I'm just aware of time, so I'm gonna move to my last question, which sort of leads on from what Chino was talking about. And I'm gonna try and get an answer from all of you. You know, lockdown has been a very strange, extraordinary, complicated time. It's enabled people to listen in particular ways. Revolutions have been started. People are starting to look at different ways of doing things. And I just wonder what you hope for out of this that shifts or that changes. And that can be a big thing or that can be a small thing. But I'm just interested in, we've got an opportunity to shift things in our world because of this strange time. And I wonder, it'd be really lovely to hear from you what you would love that to be, either big or small. Big question for the end. Make it succinct because we've only got like 2 minutes. No, I'm joking. It could be as long as you want. Go on. Who's going to start? Who's going to jump into that big question? Brilliant. Silence from everyone.
I will try a very brief,
and then we'll go to Daniel. Great.
And it'll be bad. It'll be bad. I'll try. But so I guess on like a major level, we've seen that a lot of the structures we've got in place. So this is like a sort of, you know, big overarching thing. A lot of the structures we've got in place are not fit for purpose, not fit for this purpose, or people inhabiting those structures are not fit for purpose. And I like to think that on a sort of, you know, that as a country we'll just start having big things about who we're putting in those positions and what we're demanding from them. Bringing it down to like our industry, certainly like we're going to have to rebuild. We're going to rebuild not from scratch, but like certainly from a very different position from where we left off. And I think that there's just been a lot of conversations happening during lockdown, some that are echoing conversations that have happened before, some that are, you know, sort of new. And I think, like Chino said about the ways in which we're telling stories and which stories we're leaving out. And then also just in terms of buildings, how buildings are run, how companies are run, how we interact with each other in the industry, what boxes we're putting in each other in, which behavior we're sort of looking the other way from as it happens. I think with that rebuilding, I hope that we bring in some of that perspective that we've hopefully gained through these conversations and demand more of ourselves and each other. Now, obviously that is tremendously unspecific, but I guess from a personal point of view, it's made me think a lot about my own practice and the standards I'm holding myself to. And I like to think that that's sort of happening at lots of different levels of the industry. And I like to think that, I am being unspecific, but in lots of ways, in terms of bullying, harassment, exclusion, the ways in which we're interacting with communities around the theatre, but also around the country. I like to think that all of those things will change based on the perspective that we've hopefully gained. I'm done.
Nice one. Thank you very much, John. Daniel, over to you. Go
All right, dope. Yeah, I'm so glad I was muted because all I'm doing is just I'm ad-libbing to everything people are saying. But I like being perfectly honest, like I want radical change, and I want it to be both big and small. A radical change can be a tiny thing, and it can be as simple as walking into a theatre in the West End and seeing a diverse audience. That's both huge and small. You know, that's something that's accessible, and that's something that I'd love to see, because I've certainly walked into a few theatres and like been very aware that space wasn't necessarily, I was the only Black person in that space, maybe the only working class person in that space, and I've been very aware of that. I want those things to change. I want but then also, like, I want everybody to have their own, that's in terms of the industry, but in terms of like personal, I want everybody to have their own relationship to it, man. Because for me, part of my radical change has been I know that I'm gonna spend more time with the people that I love. You know what I mean? And that's a great radical change that has nothing to do with professional. So I think everybody will have a relationship with it, but I want radical change in terms of our industry, and I want people to hopefully gain something positive out of this unifying experience. That would be my ideal. I'd want everyone to get something positive out of it. But in terms of our industry, I want radical change, man. Like, certain things aren't working. Like, Edinburgh is a whole conversation, you know, like it's not working for a lot of people, you know what I mean? Like, and so now we've got the opportunity to really think about what it is that we want to do. And I hope that we have the bravery to go with the options that maybe are more radical, rather than falling back to some of the stuff that are more safe and known at a time of uncertainty.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Excellent. Who would like to go next? I realise we got quite deep quite quickly at the end of this conversation, but I think it's important.
I think I'll just say quickly that I think for me it's both personally and as someone in the theatre industry in this country at the moment, I think that, you know, I think there's a need to reframe absolutely everything, and that speaks to that radical change that Daniel's talking about, I think. But the problem with, or rather the thing at the heart of reframing, is that it requires a sort of kind of, it requires a conversation and sometimes a confrontation. And that confrontation can be both internal and external. But I think we've got to reframe everything, both in terms of the buildings in cities and going, at the moment, the way we talk about it is this building's here and the city's around it. And actually, no, the city's here and this building has plonked itself in the middle of it. And so actually who's serving who? And I think that kind of reframing of language, and, you know, let's not call people marginalized. No, this building has marginalized itself. Let's not call people hard to reach. No, you've made yourself hard to reach. Let's not call people impoverished. No, you've impoverished yourself. You know what I mean? Like, how do you just reframe and turn everything on its head? And part of that is having very, very difficult conversations. And, you know, acknowledging the part of the healing is also listening to the anger. And that's a really difficult thing, that, you know, cannot have healing without that bearing witness to the anger that those years and years and years of injustice has created for every kind of person, for every group. And that is, you know, fundamentally the theatre I'm working towards and I want to go back to.
Amazing. Reframing, I love that. The idea of a new perspective and a sort of a paradigm shift. I think that's great. Ryan, Owen.
Just kind of echoing what Gino just said, you know, putting community at the center of the work and the industry. You know, I feel like your local man and woman should be going crazy that theatres are collapsing and dying, and they don't, because they were never part of it in the first place. Do you know what I mean? They don't care. And that's really sad, you know, because we just have to do more as an industry to make sure that these are people's stories, and they should be able to come here and watch them and to be able to see themselves in these spaces. And that's what I want to see in the new world, more of that.
Brilliant. Community centered. I think I love it. Brilliant. Owen.
Yeah, I think I've been on a couple of kind of Zoom chats with different theaters, and I feel like the thing I keep hearing is like we're having serious conversations about the future of theater, serious conversations about the direction, and I kind of just hope that translates into action. That's what I'm hoping, because it's really good that eventually certain parts of the industry, I'd say a lot of it, is kind of like addressing that there's a large section of the population that kind of failed for a very long time, and I hope that actually translates into changing the way we do business going forward. And I don't think it's just about like increasing the diversity of voices that are heard and programmed. I think it's like probably it has to go to the top. It just has to, because otherwise, what's the point? I think theatre,
Right. I mean, for me, this is what ImagiNation sort of started for us, and is a sort of a call to action. The idea of democratizing space and story and people who access it, and the fact that we've had 500 odd people who may or may not have been to the theatre before read your words and be part of this project, for me personally, is what theatre should be, rather than concrete buildings necessarily. And I think that's for me, it's a testament, and I thank you for gifting your stories to the nation, and thank you, the nation, for gifting you back some brilliant plays. And it should be as simple as that, right? That's sort of the way it needs to be. So I realized it got political by the end of it, but that's also what we do, right? That's what these things are. Everything is politics. So finally, I just want to say a huge thank you to all of you for being part of this project, which was a crazy idea when we went into lockdown, but I am so proud of it, and proud of everyone who submitted their work to us and showcased it. Just before we finish, it's just a big thank you to all of you who are watching and who are on this call. That's all I need to say, right? That's what we need to do. I'll let you get on now with your Saturday evenings. Enjoy. We've got another 2 days of the festival. So tomorrow starting at 4:30 and Monday starting at 4:30. And we'll also be talking to the writers of those subsequent days as well. So Chino, John, Daniel, Ryan, Owen, thank you very much for joining us today. And go watch more of your films, because they're great. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot, everyone. Cheers.
Cheers.
The awkward how to get out of Zoom moments.